Magnificent Seven up 106% this year. My next guest thinks that the group could add 2 more names to its ranks in 2024. Let's bring in CNBC contributor Malcolm Ethridge of CIC Wealth to further discuss. Good to see you again. What are the names?
Yeah, so to me, AMD and Adobe are those 2 names that could actually make their way into next year's Mag 7 or whatever Jim Cramer decides to call them.
Tell me why.
Yeah, so I'm looking at AMD and I'm looking at the fact that their MI300 chip has already been validated by the likes of Microsoft and Meta, who have already agreed to order the chips as soon as they're ready for delivery, which basically says to the rest of the market, the rest of the mega caps, that their AI compute chip is actually ready to take on that of NVIDIA. I won't say that it's actually ready to overtake it the way AMD has come out and claimed. That's not my area of expertise, but I will say at least that it shows that it's comparable. And then on the Adobe side, I think their Creative Cloud tool is ready and positioned to actually start to show positive momentum near term, ready to apply across the board with creatives. And Adobe made the really smart choice earlier in the year to lean all the way into AI instead of running away from it, since all of the products that they create are for the creatives that are starting to make noise about the large language models that have scooped up, creative works from authors and illustrators and everybody else. Adobe's products are actually now proprietary. All of the images in their text-to-image tool are proprietary to them. So as people look to sharpen their elbows and protect their moat, Adobe's treasure trove of images just becomes that much more attractive.
What's the Mag 7 going to do in the new year?
Yeah, so I think we're going to have to call it something else. I think a couple of names are going to fall out of favor. I think potentially Tesla. I think potentially NVIDIA. And you guys just got done talking about Apple. I won't belabor that point.
Hang on, because I'm going to ask you about Apple in a minute. But you're telling me NVIDIA is going to fall away from the Magnificent Seven? On what basis?
I don't say that NVIDIA won't actually still be a growth name, but I think the 3x return that we saw from NVIDIA this year and the return that we expect to see from them, they're going to actually start to cede some ground to names like AMD potentially, maybe even Intel, right? So right now, NVIDIA is seeing something like a $15 billion year-over-year growth rate in the AI compute space specifically. And I think Intel is something like $3.5 billion. You've got AMD that's something like $1 billion and a quarter. Those names have a lot of room to run. And NVIDIA has already shown that they're having trouble keeping up with all of the orders that they've been receiving. And so they're going to end up ceding some ground to those competitors, those challengers that I just mentioned, and some other names that we may not even be thinking about yet.
I mean, I don't think anybody expects them to have a 200% return in 2024. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to cede a whole lot of ground to a Broadcom or an AMD. They're going to lose this leadership role that they have in any way, and thus, the substantial part of the market cap that has put it in the Magnificent Seven.
Well, part of what I'm making this argument for 2024 based on, though, is that I think investors' appetite for AI is going to shift from companies promising growth 3, 4, 5 years from now to companies that can prove where the revenue is going to come from in 12 months or less. And so I think NVIDIA is on that list of companies that they've been able to grow market cap, at least, solely based on excitement over where they're going to be going 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And eventually, as investors make that shift to what have you done for me today, I think NVIDIA starts to cede a little bit of that ground is what I'm
What about Apple?
I'm
sorry. Let's go to Apple. You heard the news from Steve Kovac today. It's not a big surprise, but it seems to be taking shape. Stocks at just shy of 195. Looks like it's on track for $200 a share. I think Dan Ives yesterday or the day before said 250 is the right number on it, as he reiterates his outperform. He's not the only bull on it. I mentioned the Barron's cover earlier, which is going to get a lot of people talking as we head into next week. What's your thought?
Yeah, I read the Barron's article and it felt almost like I wrote it myself. I think Apple adding something like $1 trillion of market value in a year where, to quote the article, it hasn't actually done anything meaningful since 2016 when we got the AirPods, right? We haven't seen any major release of a hardware product since then, and Apple's actually managed to go up in market share because it's the knee-jerk reaction. Anytime, it's sort of Pavlovian, right? Anytime the market started to get shaky this year, we jumped into Apple and Microsoft as a knee-jerk reaction. I think that that's going to change next year going forward as investors, again, are looking for what are you going to provide me that shows me where you're able to generate revenue today based on what you're selling today. And so for a company that's actually seen decreasing revenue 4 quarters in a row, I think Apple's going to have something magnificent show up in 2024 that once again gets people's attention and makes us say, okay, they're serious once again. And so we'll see. I know better than to bet against Apple, but I just don't feel like the party's going to continue solely based on what we're seeing right now.
Okay.